in a shocking new development that could shatter the Roloff family forever. An exclusive insider report suggests Caryn Chandler's jealousy towards Amy Roloff has escalated to a terrifying and illegal new level. Consumed by what sources are calling a paranoid obsession, Caryn is believed to have secretly planted a GPS tracking device on Amy's car. This isn't just about keeping tabs, it's a calculated campaign of psychological warfare. Imagine the violation, the constant feeling of being watched, your every move monitored by the one person who has seemingly usurped your life. For weeks, Amy and Chris have been experiencing a series of unsettling coincidences, leading them to believe they were being followed. Now, our sources allege there's a sinister reason behind these encounters, a digital stalker hiding in plain sight, using technology to manipulate and torment. This is no longer just family drama. It's a potential criminal act with devastating consequences. If you want to stay on top of this rapidly unfolding story and get the latest exclusive updates on the Roloff family, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to LPBW Update, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss a single detail. You are not going to want to miss what we have uncovered. The picturesque rolling hills of Roloff Farms have long been the backdrop for a family saga that has captivated millions. We've watched the triumphs, the heartbreaks, the divorces, and the new beginnings. But beneath the surface of carefully curated reality television, a darker narrative has been brewing, one that insiders have hinted at for years but were too afraid to voice publicly. Today, we pull back the curtain on a story that goes beyond petty jealousies and into the realm of criminal obsession. Our exclusive sources close to the Roloff inner circle have painted a disturbing picture of Caryn Chandler, a woman so consumed by her position in Matt Roloff's life that she has allegedly resorted to illegal spying to maintain her grip on the family dynamic. The central question we are exploring, based on these insider reports, is no longer just about lingering resentments from a messy divorce. It's about a calculated, pathological fixation on Amy Roloff's newfound happiness. For years, viewers have witnessed a subtle but persistent tension between Amy and Caryn. It began with the uncomfortable reality of Matt's relationship with a longtime farm manager, a woman Amy had known and worked alongside for years. The transition was abrupt. The lines blurred between employee, friend, and then partner. Many fans have commented on the palpable awkwardness, the forced smiles at family gatherings, the carefully chosen words that betray a deeper well of unresolved conflict. But what if that tension was not just a two-way street? What if one party harbored an obsession so intense it festered into something dangerous? According to our sources, this is precisely the situation that has been unfolding behind the scenes. Caryn, despite having secured her place by Matt's side, reportedly cannot stand the thought of Amy moving on and thriving. The very idea of Amy building a happy, independent life with Chris Merrick is said to be a constant source of agitation for her. This isn't just about feeling threatened. Sources describe it as a pathological fixation. The questions to Matt are said to be relentless. Where is Amy today? What are she and Chris up to? Are they seeing the grandkids this weekend? On the surface, these inquiries are cloaked in the guise of casual curiosity, of someone simply trying to coordinate family logistics. But the frequency and intensity of the questioning have reportedly raised red flags for those in the know. It's described as a constant need to know, a desire to possess information about Amy's life that goes far beyond normal interest. It's the kind of probing that hints at a deep-seated insecurity, a fear that Amy's happiness somehow diminishes her own. This alleged obsession forms the fertile ground from which a truly sinister plot has grown. The constant need for information, for control, has apparently led Caryn down a path that crosses a very serious legal and ethical line. The decision to allegedly escalate this obsession from mere questioning to active surveillance was not a spontaneous one, according to our inside theories. It was a calculated move, the culmination of months of simmering resentment. The tool of choice? A small, discrete magnetic GPS tracker. These devices are readily available online, marketed for everything from keeping track of your own vehicle to monitoring teen drivers. But in the wrong hands, they become a stalker's best friend. The purchase, sources theorize, was made with careful consideration to anonymity. A prepaid credit card, a generic online retail account, and delivery to a P.O. box or even to the sprawling Roloff Farms property itself, where one small package could easily go unnoticed among the daily deliveries for the farm and its various businesses. The device itself is unremarkable, a tiny black box that could easily be mistaken for a piece of automotive equipment by an untrained eye. Once in her possession, Caryn allegedly waited for the perfect opportunity, a moment where she could get close to Amy's vehicle without raising suspicion. That opportunity, our sources contend, came during a seemingly innocuous family event at Matt's new house. A birthday party for one of the grandchildren, perhaps, or a summer barbecue. These are the moments the family still attempts to navigate together, for the sake of the kids. It's a fragile truce, a performance for the cameras and for the family. And it was under the cover of this performance that the alleged crime took place. While Amy was inside, catching up with the children, laughing and creating the appearance of a blended family at peace, Caryn is said to have slipped away. Under the pretext of grabbing something from her car or taking a phone call, she made her way to where Amy's vehicle was parked. The act itself would have taken mere seconds. A quick glance to ensure no one was watching, a reach underneath the car's frame, and the quiet click of the magnet attaching itself to the metal undercarriage. Just like that, Amy's freedom was compromised. The tracker was active, linked to a simple app on Caryn's phone, transforming her into a digital shadow, a 24/7 observer of Amy's life. From that moment on, every trip to the grocery store, every visit to a friend's house, every quiet evening out with Chris would be broadcast directly to her phone. The initial phase of this alleged illegal surveillance was all about data collection. Caryn, sources believe, spent days simply watching. She would study the patterns, learn the routines. She'd see the frequent trips to the gym, the weekly grocery runs, the visits to her children, Zach and Tori, or Jeremy and Audrey. She would know when Amy was home and when she was out. This was the foundation of her psychological warfare. The information itself was power. It allowed her to anticipate Amy's moves, to understand the rhythm of her new life. But passive observation was never the end goal. The goal was to use this illegally obtained information to destabilize Amy, to make her feel unsettled, to subtly reclaim a sense of control over the family narrative that she felt was slipping away. The first coincidental run-in was designed to be subtle, almost deniable. Amy and Chris, seeking a quiet evening away from the cameras and the family drama, chose a small, out-of-the-way Italian restaurant. It was their spot, a place they had discovered together, far from the usual haunts. As they were seated, enjoying a glass of wine, they looked up to see Caryn and Matt walking through the door. The surprise on Amy's face was genuine. The odds of this happening in a city with thousands of restaurants seemed astronomical. Caryn, of course, played her part to perfection, feigning utter astonishment. "Amy, Matt, look who it is! What a small world!" The encounter was brief but impactful. It planted a seed of unease in Amy's mind. How could this have happened? Was it just a bizarre coincidence or something more? Chris, ever the pragmatist, likely brushed it off. But for Amy, who has a long and complicated history with both Matt and Caryn, the incident lingered. But this was just the beginning. The run-ins, according to our exclusive theories, started to become more frequent, more pointed. A chance meeting in the aisle of a specific home decor store Amy was visiting for the first time. A wave from a car as Amy and Chris were taking a scenic drive along a secluded road. Each incident was carefully orchestrated to feel like a strange twist of fate, but the cumulative effect was far more sinister. It was designed to create a feeling of being watched, of being omnipresent. Amy started to feel a growing sense of paranoia. Was she imagining things? Was the world smaller than she thought? She would mention these strange encounters to Chris, who, while supportive, struggled to see the pattern. He hadn't lived through the decades of complex dynamics that Amy had. He didn't understand the subtle power plays and manipulations that had characterized her later years with Matt. He saw coincidences. Amy was beginning to suspect a campaign. The psychological warfare, however, was not limited to these manufactured encounters. The real genius of Caryn's alleged plan was how she used the information to manipulate Matt and the rest of the family. The GPS data gave her a constant stream of ammunition. One afternoon, the tracker showed Amy's car parked at a downtown building for over an hour. A quick online search of the building's directory revealed it housed several law firms. That evening, Caryn sent a carefully crafted text to Matt. "Hey, just driving through town and saw Amy's car parked outside the Miller building. Hope everything is okay. Just seemed like an odd place for her to be." The message was a masterclass in manipulation. It was framed as concern, the loving partner worried about the well-being of her partner's ex-wife. But the underlying intention was to sow seeds of doubt and suspicion in Matt's mind. Is Amy planning something? Is she seeking legal counsel? Is she trying to stir up trouble? It forced Matt to wonder, to question, and to ultimately rely on Caryn for information and interpretation. She was positioning herself as the vigilant, concerned party, while in reality, she was the architect of the entire drama. This tactic was allegedly used repeatedly in various contexts. She would see Amy's car at a doctor's office and mention to Matt with a worried tone that she hoped Amy's health was all right. She would notice a visit to a financial advisor and subtly bring up conversations about the farm's finances, planting worries about Amy's intentions. Every piece of data was twisted and weaponized, not just against Amy, but to solidify her own position with Matt. She was making herself indispensable, the one who was looking out for him and the family's interests. She created a narrative where Amy was secretive and potentially problematic, while she was the open, honest, and concerned partner. It was a slow, insidious poisoning of the family well, and she was holding the vial. The impact on Amy was profound. She began to feel a constant, low-grade anxiety. The world no longer felt safe or predictable. She started to second-guess her choices. If she went to a new coffee shop, would she see them there? If she visited a friend, would Caryn somehow know? The joy and freedom she had felt in building her new life with Chris were slowly being eroded, replaced by a sense of being watched and managed. This is the insidious nature of stalking. It's not always about overt threats. It's about the destruction of a person's sense of security. It's a theft of peace, an invasion of the soul. Amy, a woman who had spent years fighting for her independence and her own identity, separate from the farm and from Matt, found herself once again feeling controlled, her life being observed and judged from a distance. Chris, meanwhile, was transitioning from a skeptical observer to a concerned partner. He could see the toll this was taking on Amy. He saw her anxiety, her frustration. He started paying closer attention to the details of the coincidences. He began to realize that the odds were simply too long. The same restaurant? Possible. The same store on the same day? Unlikely, but not impossible. The same secluded road, miles from their usual routes? That was the one that reportedly triggered his suspicion. Chris is described by those who know him as a meticulous and observant man, especially when it comes to his vehicles. He takes pride in keeping them clean and well-maintained. It was this very trait, this attention to detail, that would ultimately be Caryn's undoing. The constant unease, the feeling that something was fundamentally wrong, prompted him to do something he did regularly, but this time with a new sense of purpose. He decided to give Amy's car a thorough washing. It was a sunny afternoon, the kind of day that should have been peaceful. Chris gathered his supplies, the bucket, the sponges, the car wash soap. He started with the roof, working his way down the sides. As he got to the rear of the car, he decided to clean the wheel wells and the undercarriage, areas that often get neglected. He knelt down, spraying the water underneath the bumper, and that's when he saw it. Tucked away in a recess of the frame, partially obscured by a bit of road grime, was a small, black box. It was no bigger than a matchbox, with a powerful magnet holding it firmly in place. It was not a part of the car. It was something foreign, something that had been placed there. His heart sank. In that instant, all of Amy's fears, all the strange coincidences, all the unsettling feelings of being watched clicked into place. It wasn't paranoia. It was real. Someone was tracking them. Chris's first instinct might have been to rip the device off, to smash it under his heel. But he was smarter than that. He immediately recognized the object for what it was and understood the implications. Removing it would alert the person monitoring them that they had been discovered. It would destroy the evidence. His mind, clear and logical, immediately went to the next step. He calmly stood up, told Amy he had found something, and showed her the device without touching it further. The look on Amy's face was a mixture of terror and vindication. She wasn't crazy. Her instincts had been right all along. They were being stalked. And in that moment, they both knew with a sickening certainty who was likely responsible. There was only one person with the motive, the obsession, and the proximity to plant such a device. There was only one person who stood to gain from this campaign of psychological terror, Caryn. Instead of removing the tracker, they made the most crucial decision in this entire ordeal. They left it in place and drove directly to the local police station. This elevated the situation from a disturbing family drama to a criminal matter. At the station, they explained the series of unsettling events, the constant coincidental encounters, and the discovery of the GPS device. The police took their report with the utmost seriousness. Stalking, especially using electronic surveillance, is a significant crime. An officer carefully removed the device from the car, bagging it as evidence. The investigation began immediately. The first step for law enforcement was to get a warrant to access the data associated with the tracker. This process, which can sometimes be lengthy, was expedited due to the clear evidence of stalking. The warrant allowed them to compel the manufacturer of the device and the cellular service provider to turn over all associated records. This is where the stalker's attempts at anonymity began to unravel. The account linked to the GPS tracker was, as expected, registered to a burner email address, a generic, untraceable name created specifically for this purpose. However, the digital breadcrumbs did not end there. The purchase of the device, while perhaps made with a prepaid card, was traced back to an IP address. An IP address is a unique identifier for an internet connection, and in this case, the address geolocated directly to one place, Roloff Farms. This was the first major break in the case, linking the crime to the family's home base. But the most damning piece of evidence, the smoking gun, was yet to come. The GPS tracker sent its location data to a specific app on a smartphone. Law enforcement was able to trace the unique identifier of the monitoring app itself. Every smartphone has a unique ID, and the app being used to watch Amy's every move was linked to a single device. A quick cross-reference of cellular records confirmed the owner of that phone. The phone belonged to Caryn Chandler. The digital trail was complete and undeniable. From the IP address at the point of purchase to the monitoring app on her personal phone, the evidence formed an unbreakable chain leading directly to her. The police now had everything they needed. They had the physical device, the digital trail, and a clear suspect. The insider reports and exclusive theories that had been swirling were now on the verge of becoming cold, hard fact. The secret war Caryn had been waging from the shadows was about to be dragged into the harsh light of a criminal investigation. The phone call from the police was the moment everything changed. It was one thing to suspect, to fear, to find the physical evidence. It was another thing entirely to have your worst fears confirmed by a detective in a calm, official tone. The investigation, he explained, had been swift and conclusive. The digital trail was irrefutable. The person who had been electronically stalking Amy Roloff was, without a shadow of a doubt, Caryn Chandler. For Amy, the news landed not with a sense of triumph, but with a wave of profound sickness. The violation felt deeper now, more personal. This wasn't a random act. It was a betrayal perpetrated by someone enmeshed in the very fabric of her family. Every chance encounter, every manipulative text message Matt had received, every paranoid thought she had dismissed as an overreaction, now coalesced into a horrifying, deliberate campaign of terror waged against her. Chris was livid. His protective instincts, which had been on high alert for weeks, now blazed into a cold fury. He saw the woman he loved, a woman who had fought so hard for her peace and happiness, being psychologically tormented by her ex-husband's partner. For him, the path forward was simple. Press charges. Let the justice system handle it. This was a crime, and criminals should face consequences. But for Amy, the situation was infinitely more complex. Pressing charges meant dragging her family, her children, and her grandchildren through a public and humiliating legal battle. It would mean headlines, court dates, and testimony that would lay bare the ugliest parts of their lives for the world to see. It would force her children into an impossible position, caught between their mother and their father's partner. Yet, the alternative, doing nothing, felt like an abdication of her own safety and self-respect. It would send a message that Caryn's behavior was acceptable, that this level of violation could be swept under the rug for the sake of keeping a fragile peace. After a long, agonizing discussion, they arrived at a decision. Before they made any legal moves, there was one person who had to know the full, unvarnished truth, presented with undeniable evidence. They had to confront Matt. He needed to understand the true nature of the woman he shared his life with. He needed to see the police report, to see the proof in black and white, and to be forced to reckon with the dangerous reality of the situation Caryn had created. They arranged to meet Matt at the old farmhouse. The symbolism was heavy. It was the house where Amy had raised her 4 children, the epicenter of her life for nearly 3 decades. It was a place of shared history, of family meals and holiday celebrations, a silent witness to the slow and painful dissolution of her marriage. Meeting there was a deliberate choice, a way to ground the conversation in the reality of the family that Caryn's actions had put in jeopardy. Matt arrived likely expecting a tense conversation about farm business or scheduling with the grandkids. He was not prepared for the gravity of what was to come. There was no small talk. Amy and Chris sat him down at the familiar kitchen table and laid a file folder in front of him. Inside was a copy of the police report. They didn't start with accusations. They simply asked him to read. As Matt's eyes scanned the pages, his expression shifted from confusion to disbelief, then to a defensive anger. He read the details of the GPS tracker, the timeline of events, the analysis of the digital evidence. He saw the IP address traced back to his own farm. He saw the unique identifier for the monitoring app linked directly to Caryn's phone number. His first reaction was denial. It was a classic human response to a reality too painful to immediately accept. "This is a mistake," he likely said, his voice tight. "There has to be another explanation. Someone must have spoofed her phone's ID or used our Wi-Fi. Caryn would not do this." He looked at Amy, perhaps searching for a hint of doubt, but found only a quiet, resolute sadness. He turned to Chris, expecting a confrontation, but saw only a man calmly waiting for the facts to sink in. He tried to defend Caryn, grasping at straws. Maybe she was worried about Amy's safety. Maybe she thought someone else was following Amy and was trying to protect her. The excuses grew flimsier as he voiced them, pathetic attempts to build a wall against the incoming tide of truth. Chris let him talk, let him exhaust his initial defenses. Then he calmly pointed to the specific lines in the report. He explained the technical aspects of the evidence, how an app's unique ID is tied to a physical device, how difficult it is to fake such a thing. He walked Matt through the series of coincidental run-ins, showing him how they matched the GPS location data perfectly. He recounted the manipulative texts Caryn had sent, texts Matt himself had received, and showed him how they were directly preceded by Amy's car appearing at those specific locations. The wall of denial began to crack. Matt fell silent, reading the report again, this time not as a defendant, but as a man being forced to see the truth. The woman he loved, the woman he had chosen over his wife of nearly 30 years, the woman he had built a new life with, was a stalker. She had committed a serious crime, not against a stranger, but against the mother of his children. The betrayal was staggering. It wasn't just about the illegal act itself, it was about the profound deception. How long had this obsession been festering? What other lies had been told? The foundation of his new life was built on a lie, and the architect of that lie was the woman sleeping in his bed. The realization was a quiet, devastating implosion. He was living with a woman whose obsession was so dangerously unhinged that she had made their entire family the subject of a criminal investigation. Leaving the farmhouse, Matt was a man adrift in a sea of shock and betrayal. The drive back to his new home, the one he had built with Caryn, must have felt like the longest drive of his life. Every memory of their time together was now tainted, every declaration of love and concern now suspect. The confrontation with Caryn was inevitable and explosive. He would have presented her with the police report, with the undeniable evidence of her crime. In these moments, a person's true character is revealed. According to our insider theories, Caryn's reaction was not one of immediate remorse or confession. It was a masterclass in gaslighting and victimhood. She likely denied it at first, accusing Amy and Chris of setting her up, of fabricating evidence to drive a wedge between her and Matt. "They've always hated me. They'll do anything to get rid of me," she might have claimed. But as Matt held firm, pointing to the evidence that came not from Amy, but from the police, her strategy shifted. The denial gave way to twisted justifications. "I was just worried about her, Matt. She's so reckless sometimes. I was just trying to make sure she was safe." It was an absurd defense, painting a criminal act of stalking as an act of concern. She may have then turned the blame on Amy herself. "You know how secretive she can be. I was trying to protect you, to make sure she wasn't planning something to hurt you or the farm." She was twisting the narrative, attempting to reframe her obsession as a form of loyalty to Matt. But the evidence was too specific, too damning. The late-night monitoring, the tracking of dates with Chris, the texts designed to sow discord, none of it could be explained away as simple concern. Faced with the irrefutable proof from her own phone, her defenses finally crumbled. The argument would have exposed the raw, ugly truth of her obsession, a possessiveness so complete that she could not tolerate Amy having a life outside of her orbit and control. The confrontation would have shattered the carefully constructed facade of their relationship, leaving Matt to wonder if he ever knew this woman at all. The shockwaves from this revelation did not stop at Matt and Caryn's front door. They radiated outward, threatening to shatter the entire Roloff family structure. The news would have to be shared with the children: Zach, Jeremy, Molly, and Jacob. Each of them would receive a call that would redefine their understanding of their family. Their reactions would inevitably be colored by their individual relationships with their parents and with Caryn. Zach and Tori have already had a very public and very tense falling out with Matt and Caryn. For them, this news, while shocking, might also have served as a dark validation of their feelings. It would likely confirm their belief that Caryn was a manipulative force within the family, someone who had contributed to the growing estrangement from Matt. This could be the final, unforgivable act, severing any remaining ties and solidifying their decision to keep their distance to protect their own family. It's hard to imagine them ever being willing to be in the same room as Caryn again, and it would put Matt in the impossible position of having to choose between his partner and his son. For Jeremy and Audrey, the situation could be more complex. They have often appeared to maintain a more neutral, if sometimes distant, relationship with Matt and Caryn. They might be more inclined to hear Matt's side of the story, perhaps even to entertain the idea that the situation was a massive misunderstanding. However, the presence of an official police report makes that position incredibly difficult to hold. They would be forced to confront the reality that their mother was the victim of a crime. This would inevitably create a deep and painful rift, forcing them to navigate an impossible emotional landscape. How do you support your mother while maintaining a relationship with a father who has chosen to stand by the woman who stalked her? The loyalty pulls would be immense, testing the bonds of family in an unprecedented way. This event would force every single member of the Roloff clan off the fence. There would be no more pretending, no more polite fictions for the sake of family gatherings. Lines would be drawn and sides would be chosen. The family, already fractured by divorce and disagreements, was now facing a schism from which it might never recover. Beyond the family, Amy and Chris were left with a monumental decision, whether or not to press formal charges. The police had their evidence, a case that was, by all accounts, a slam dunk. But the legal system is impersonal. It does not care for family dynamics or the potential for public humiliation. For Amy, pressing charges would mean surrendering the last vestige of control over the situation to prosecutors and judges. The story would become public record. The media frenzy would be unimaginable. Tabloids would feast on the details, and the narrative of their lives would be defined by this one sordid event. Every painful detail would be analyzed on cable news and debated endlessly on social media. It would be a trauma relived over and over again in the public eye. And it would mean the very real possibility of Caryn Chandler facing jail time. While the thought might bring a sense of justice, it would also mean a level of destruction to her family that even after everything, Amy might be hesitant to inflict. The alternative was to use the police report as leverage. They could choose not to press charges on the condition that Caryn agrees to a legally binding restraining order. This would keep her physically and digitally away from them, a legal guarantee of the safety and peace she had been denied. It would also require a profound and public acknowledgement of her guilt. This path offered a way to secure their safety without initiating the scorched earth campaign of a public trial. It was a choice between public justice and private peace, and there was no easy answer. This dilemma also presented a massive crisis for the brand that is Little People, Big World. The show has always been built on a foundation of family, authenticity, and overcoming challenges. A criminal stalking scandal involving its main cast members would shatter that image irreparably. TLC, the network behind the show, would be forced into an impossible position. How could they continue to film a show that purports to be about family when such a toxic and criminal dynamic exists at its core? The public relations nightmare would be immense. Advertisers would flee, and the pressure to cancel the show would be overwhelming. The very continuation of the Roloff's television dynasty was now hanging by a thread. In the end, this is a story with no easy villains or heroes, only deeply flawed human beings caught in a spiral of obsession and betrayal. Matt Roloff is left a man adrift, forced to choose between the woman he loves and the family he built. Does he stand by Caryn, accepting that he is in a relationship with a woman capable of such dangerous deception, and in doing so, risk permanent alienation from his children? Or does he cut ties, admitting to himself and the world that his judgment was catastrophically wrong, and face the lonely reality of his choices? For Amy, the path forward is also fraught with peril. Does she seek justice in a court of law, no matter the collateral damage to her family? Or does she seek a private peace, forever knowing that the person who violated her trust so profoundly continues to be a part of her children's lives? The trust that once held this complex family together, however tenuously, has been vaporized. The illusion of a blended family navigating their differences has been replaced by the stark reality of victim and perpetrator. The green fields of Roloff Farms, once a symbol of a shared dream, are now the scene of a crime, a place haunted by the ghosts of what was and the wreckage of what is. The future of the Roloff family, their television show, and their legacy now hangs in the balance, a cautionary tale of how jealousy, when left to fester in the dark, can grow into an obsession that consumes everything in its path.